My name is Brian Tolle. I'm an artist working in New York. I have an active studio practice where I make sculptures for exhibition in galleries and museums. I've expanded my production to include site-specific works, and I've been lucky enough to make projects around the world.
My name is Marc Boutin, and I'm the principal of the Marc Boutin Architectural Collaborative. We are a group of architects working here in Calgary, developing both the overall landscape strategy as a platform for Brian's work as a public artist.
When I first arrived here, Heather Aitken took me out to the Rockies, and we actually went directly to the edge of the glacier. And so I had this very, very visceral experience with this place.
So the artist, Brian, has taken a topographical map of Mount Peachey, and with his computer program, he's generated 3D modeling and created an inverted piece of the mountain range. The snow and rain that comes off of Mount Peachey, though, flows into the Bow River Basin. So it flows into the Bow River and flows down through Calgary on its way to the Hudson's Bay.
Because we're working so closely with water resources, all of that research, all of the information about street runoff and sewer runoff and the history and the role of the river was provided to me. So it was this very visceral visit to this very magical place, and all of the information that was being provided to me by resources that began to gel in the form that it finally took. Yeah. Here in the case of Calgary, where you have this very specific relationship to the source of your drinking water, the Bow River, and this idea of a collective memory, and of course the river having a memory of its own, right, and a source. And so trying to make a connection between what happens to water in urban environments and where it comes from in its pristine form. And so I wanted to reconnect that gap between the Rocky Mountains, the source of the water, and try to represent it in a way that's meaningful to this urban landscape. We're dealing with a water system here, right? So we're having to be very, very sensitive about permitting and how much disturbance we cause to the riverbank here, and we want to make sure that the project not only is a beautiful sculpture, but it functions as part of this water system.
So the storm water that comes from this neighborhood runs off the driveways, runs down the streets, flows into the outfall and directly into the river untreated. So by daylighting the outfall and providing people with the opportunity to look into the bottom of the mountain range, they're going to see what is flowing untreated into our river.
That there's not going to be another place like this again in Calgary. And so how can you internalize the fact that this is a kind of a gift to Calgarians for 50 years, and make sure that now we have 8 months to finish this, that we just make sure it's as good as it can be. Having done a number of other nodes along the landscape of memory, we knew that we wanted this to integrate into that as a seamless entity that is about culture and art. There was a realization that the piece was really about discovery. And so the space became one that was fairly contemplative. There was a kind of a level of quietness and a level of contemplation that was inherent in the site that worked well with the piece itself. You know, here's this space that for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, Calgarians are going to come to and contemplate not just the river's edge, but the water, a broader narrative around the Bow River, and how we influence that as human beings and citizens of the city. So it has a lot to do with the art piece, but from our perspective, we wanted the landscape architecture in the sense of the public realm to support the message and the narrative that the art piece has. And